3 seconds. That is exactly how long it took for Elena to make the decision that would either end her life or change the world. When Damian Blackwood, the most feared CEO in Silicon Valley, walked back into his private VIP suite, he didn't expect to see the spilled wine or the broken glass. He expected to see his billion-dollar algorithm crashing. Instead, he saw the invisible waitress, the one he hadn't looked in the eye all night, standing over his open laptop, her fingers flying across the keys of his prototype machine. He didn't just fire her, he destroyed her. But then, he looked at the screen. What he saw wasn't just code. It was a message that terrified him to his core. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Inside the penthouse suite of the Obsidian Club, the air smelled of aged leather, single malt scotch, and impending financial ruin. Damian Blackwood, the 34-year-old CEO of Waitress Systems, stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the city lights blur through the downpour. His reflection in the glass looked like a ghost, pale, hollow-eyed, and impeccably dressed in a bespoke Tom Ford suit that cost more than most people's cars. "It's not holding, Damian," a voice crackled through the speakerphone on the mahogany desk. It was Marcus Vane, his CTO. Even through the static, Vane sounded smug. "The neural compression is too heavy. The logic gates are collapsing under the load. We can't demo this on Friday. If we do, Ethereum stocks go to zero." Damian turned, hurling his crystal tumbler against the fireplace. It shattered, sending amber liquid hissing into the flames. "Fix it, Marcus," Damian growled, his voice a low rumble of dangerous calm. "I don't care if you have to burn out every server farm from here to Palo Alto. The Chimera update launches in 48 hours. If the stock tanks, I'm not going down alone. I'll gut you and the entire engineering department first." He ended the call, slamming his hand down on the desk so hard, his open laptop jumped. In the corner of the room, Elena Ross flinched. She had been trying to make herself as small as possible for the last hour. Dressed in the stiff, uncomfortable black vest and white shirt of the Obsidian service staff, she held a silver tray with a trembling hand. She was 24, with dark circles under her eyes that even cheap concealer couldn't hide, and hair pulled back so tight it gave her a headache. She was invisible. To men like Damian Blackwood, she was furniture. Just a mechanism that refilled drinks and cleared ashtrays. "Get that mess cleaned up," Damian snapped, gesturing vaguely at the fireplace where the glass had shattered. He didn't look at her. He sat down heavily in front of his laptop, rubbing his temples. "Yes, sir," Elena whispered. She moved quickly, kneeling by the hearth. As she picked up the shards of crystal, her eyes darted toward the man at the desk. Damian was staring at lines of code cascading down his screen, a waterfall of neon blue and white text against a black background. Elena knew she shouldn't look. She had bills to pay. Her brother, Leo, was sitting in a specialized care facility in Bellevue, waiting for a surgery that cost $40,000. She needed this job. She needed the tips. She needed to be invisible. But as she swept the glass into a dustpan, the text on the screen caught her eye. It wasn't just gibberish to her. It was a language. A beautiful, broken language. She recognized the syntax immediately. It was a hybrid C++ structure, heavily modified for quantum processing simulations. But it was ugly. It was bloated. She could see the redundancy from 10 feet away. The loop on line 402 was calling a memory pointer that didn't exist anymore. It was a recursive nightmare. He's trying to force a synchronous handshake on an asynchronous thread, she thought, her brow furrowing. That's why it's crashing. The latency is eating the processor alive. Damian groaned, running his hands through his dark hair. "Garbage," he muttered. "It's all absolute garbage." He stood up abruptly, grabbing his phone. "I need air. If Vane calls back, don't touch anything." He didn't wait for a response. He stormed out of the suite, the heavy oak door slamming shut behind him, leaving Elena alone in the silence of the room. The laptop sat there, open, glowing. Elena stood up. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Leave," a voice in her head screamed. "Just clean the glass and leave. You are a waitress. You are a nobody. You are a college dropout who couldn't afford tuition." She took a step toward the door. But the code was screaming in pain. It was like seeing a wounded animal trapped in a snare. It was wrong. It was inefficient. It was offensive to her mind. She looked at the security camera in the corner. The red light was steady. Leo needs the surgery, she reminded herself. Don't get fired. But she also knew who Damian Blackwood was. Aetherius Systems was the gold standard. If she could just prove it. If she could just show him that she wasn't just a pair of hands holding a tray. She took a step toward the desk. Then another. The screen hummed. The error log was flashing. Fatal exception. Memory overflow. You're calling the wrong library, she whispered to the empty room. She set her tray down on the side table. Her hands were shaking. But the moment her fingers hovered over the keyboard, the shaking stopped. This was her world. This was the only place where she made sense. She hit Ctrl+C to kill the running process. The terminal flashed. She didn't hesitate. She began to type. The keys on Damian's laptop were mechanical, custom-built switches that felt like velvet under her fingertips. Elena moved with a speed that would have blurred the vision of a casual observer. She didn't just patch the bug. She rewrote the logic. Delete lines 400 to 456. Insert void function. Async_bridge. Redirect the pointer to the heap, not the stack. She was in a trance. The world outside, the rain, the debt, the sick brother, the aching feet, dissolved. There was only the logic, the puzzle. She saw the architecture of the Chimera algorithm clearly. It was brilliant, but it was arrogant. It assumed the hardware could keep up with the software. It couldn't. She needed to introduce a delay, a millisecond of breathing room, for the processors to catch up before the next data packet was sent. She typed, if thread_load greater than 0.9, await clear_buffer. It was simple. Elegant. A safety valve for a nuclear reactor. She was so engrossed in the flow of the syntax that she didn't hear the heavy oak door click open. She didn't hear the muffled footsteps on the plush carpet. She was just hitting compile when the voice hit her like a physical blow. What do you think you're doing? The voice wasn't loud. It was terrifyingly quiet. Elena froze. Her finger was still hovering over the enter key. The blood drained from her face so fast she felt dizzy. She slowly turned around. Damian Blackwood was standing 10 feet away. He had returned, his jacket off, his sleeves rolled up. His face was unreadable, a mask of cold, hard granite. But his eyes were blazing. Elena's voice failed her. I was just... Damian crossed the room in 2 long strides. He didn't grab her. He was too disciplined for that. But he loomed over her, radiating a fury that made the air feel thin. Get away from the machine, he said. Elena stumbled back, bumping into the side table. The silver tray rattled. Sir, I can explain. The loop was stuck. I saw the recursive error and... You saw? Damian laughed, a harsh bark of a sound. You're a waitress. You saw pretty colors moving on a screen and decided to play hacker? Do you have any idea what that machine is worth? Do you have any idea what that source code is worth? He moved between her and the desk, shielding the laptop as if she were a contagion. He looked at her then, really looked at her, with a mixture of disgust and confusion. You've compromised proprietary data, he said, his voice dropping an octave. That is corporate espionage. I could have the FBI here in 20 minutes. Who sent you? Was it Vane? Or did Apex Corp pay you to corrupt the drive? No one sent me. Elena cried out, tears stinging her eyes. The fear was rising, choking her. I'm not a spy. I work here. I told a mistake. You were crashing because of the memory leak and the handshake protocol. It wasn't the compression. It was the timing. Damian paused. The specific terminology hung in the air. Handshake protocol. Memory leak. He narrowed his eyes. Get out. Sir, please. I said get out. Damian roared, pointing at the door. You're fired. Consider yourself lucky if I don't press charges. If I see you in this building again, I'll have security throw you out the window. Elena felt a sob catch in her throat. She looked at him, then at the computer screen behind him where the compiler bar was frozen at 99%. I fixed it, she whispered, her voice trembling but defiant. If you run it, it will work. Out, she turned and ran. She grabbed her purse from the service closet in the hallway and burst out of the Obsidian Club, fleeing into the pouring Seattle rain. She didn't have an umbrella. She didn't have a job. And tomorrow the facility was going to call about Leo's bill. Back in the suite, Damian Blackwood stood alone, his chest heaving with adrenaline. He felt violated. A stranger, a member of the service staff, touching his life's work. He reached for the phone to call security and ensure she was blacklisted from every high-end establishment in the city. But his hand stopped. On the screen, the terminal blinked. Compilation. Successful. 0 errors. 0 warnings. Damian stared. That was impossible. Vane had said the compilation alone would take 3 hours and would likely fail. He sat down, slowly. His anger was replaced by a cold knot of dread. He looked at the lines of code she had inserted. It was different. It wasn't the standard library. It was a custom script, woven into the existing architecture with surgical precision. It was intuitive. It anticipated the crash and sidestepped it. He hovered the mouse over the run button. If this is a virus, he thought, I just lost the company. But curiosity, the fatal flaw of every engineer, took over. He clicked run. The screen went black. Then, the Chimera logo spun into existence. The simulation loaded. The neural network fired up. Usually, the CPU temperature would spike to 95 degrees instantly. It stayed at a cool 45. The simulation ran smooth as silk. The data processed faster than he had ever seen. My God, Damian whispered. He pulled up the command history to see exactly what she had done. And then he saw it. At the very bottom of the code, hidden in a comment line, she must have typed out of habit, a signature, /patch by E. Ross, 4:12 a.m. Damian sat back in his chair, the glow of the screen illuminating his shocked face. He had just fired the only person who understood his machine. He grabbed his phone, but this time, he didn't dial security. He dialed his personal driver. Thomas, he said, his voice urgent. Bring the car around, now, and find out where the hell the night shift staff exits the building. Elena was soaked to the bone. She stood under the awning of a closed bakery 3 blocks from the Obsidian Club, shivering violently. The rain in Seattle was unforgiving, a freezing mist that seeped into everything. She tried to light a cigarette, but her lighter wouldn't spark. She threw it into a puddle and slid down the brick wall, burying her face in her hands. Stupid, she berated herself. So stupid. You let your ego get in the way of survival. Leo is going to be discharged because you couldn't keep your mouth shut and your hands in your pockets. Her phone buzzed. A text from the care facility. Payment overdue. Please contact administration immediately. She squeezed her eyes shut. She had $400 in her checking account. Rent was $1,200. The surgery was impossible. A pair of headlights swept across the wet pavement, blinding her. A sleek black Maybach pulled up to the curb, splashing water onto the sidewalk. The engine purred with the quiet menace of extreme wealth. Elena stiffened. She grabbed her bag, ready to run. Had he called the police? Was this it? The rear passenger door opened. An umbrella popped out, followed by a polished leather shoe. Damian Blackwood stepped out into the rain. He wasn't wearing a coat over his suit. He looked frantic, his hair plastered to his forehead within seconds. He scanned the street, spotting her huddled form against the bakery wall. You! He shouted over the sound of the thunder. Elena scrambled to her feet. I'm leaving! I'm waiting for a bus! Damian marched toward her. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked intense, manic even. He stopped 3 feet away from her, ignoring the rain, soaking his expensive suit. How did you know about the buffer overflow? He demanded. Elena blinked, wiping rain from her lashes. What? The code. Damian pressed, stepping closer. The asynchronous bridge. How did you know the stack would collapse? That isn't taught in standard comp sci. That's theoretical quantum architecture. I read, Elena stammered, hugging herself for warmth. You read? Damian scoffed, incredulous. You don't learn that from a textbook. You learn that by breaking things. He paused, looking at her ragged uniform, her shivering frame. Who are you, Elena Ross? I'm nobody, she spat back, her defense mechanism kicking in. I'm the waitress you just fired, remember? I'm rehiring you, Damian said instantly. I don't want your job, Elena turned away. I don't want to serve drinks to people who treat me like a ghost. Not as a waitress. Damian grabbed her arm, gently but firmly. He pulled her back to face him. I want you to come with me to Waitress. Right now. Are you insane? It's 2 a.m. The code you wrote, Damian said, his voice dropping to a whisper. It increased the processing efficiency by 300%. Do you understand what that means? It means Chimera works. It means I win. Elena looked at him. She saw the desperation in his eyes. It mirrored her own. I need money, she said bluntly. I don't need an internship. I don't need exposure. I need $40,000. Damian didn't blink. If you can replicate what you did tonight on the main server, I'll give you $50,000. Cash. Tonight. Elena's breath hitched. $50,000. That was Leo's surgery. That was rent for a year. And if I can't? She asked. Then I leave you on the side of the road, Damian said, his face hardening. But I have a feeling you can. He held the car door open for her. The interior looked like a spaceship. Warm leather, soft amber lights. Elena looked at the dark street, then at the open door. It was a deal with the devil. She knew men like Damian. They used people up and threw them away. But for Leo, she would walk into hell. She stepped into the car. The headquarters of Waitress Systems wasn't a building. It was a fortress of glass and steel, piercing the Seattle skyline. At 2:45 a.m., the lobby was silent, save for the rhythmic waxing of the marble floors by the night crew. When Damian Blackwood strode through the revolving doors, the security guards snapped to attention. They were used to their CEO's erratic hours, but they weren't used to what trailed behind him. A soaking wet woman in a cheap waitress uniform, clutching a purse like a life raft, her sneakers squeaking on the pristine floor. Mr. Blackwood. The head of security, a burly man named Miller, stepped forward, eyeing Elena with suspicion. Do we need to sign in a guest? She's with me, Damian said, not slowing down. Clear the elevator to the 40th floor. And Miller? No one enters the server sanctuary unless I authorize it. No one. Yes, sir. The elevator ride was excruciating. The mirrored walls reflected Elena's disheveled state. Her mascara had run, leaving dark streaks down her cheeks. Beside her, Damian looked composed, his energy vibrating with a manic intensity. You have questions, Damian said, watching the floor numbers tick upward. I have doubts, Elena corrected him, hugging her arms. You're offering me $50,000 to fix a problem your entire engineering team couldn't solve. That tells me two things. Either you're desperate, or you're setting me up. Damian turned to her, a faint smile playing on his lips. I am desperate. The board votes on Friday. If Chimera fails, they vote me out. I lose my company, my legacy, everything. Why me? Because you code like you have nothing to lose, Damian said softly. My engineers code to keep their jobs. They play it safe. You played jazz on that keyboard. I need jazz. The doors pinged open. The 40th floor was known as the sanctuary. It was kept at a constant 64 degrees to protect the massive server racks visible through glass walls. The main workspace was a sprawling open-concept area lit by the soft blue glow of monitors. Only 3 people were there, the skeleton crew, junior developers keeping the lights on. They looked up, exhausted, as their CEO marched in with a stray cat of a woman. Damian led her to a workstation in the center of the room. It was isolated, connected directly to the mainframe. Sit, Damian commanded. Elena sat. The chair was an ergonomic masterpiece, worth more than her car. The keyboard was a blank slate. Damian leaned over her, placing a hand on the desk. This isn't a laptop anymore, Elena. This is the main nerve center of Waitress. You have access to the core kernel. He pulled up a complex visualizer on the main screen. It looked like a 3D map of a galaxy, swirling with data points. The issue wasn't just the handshake, Damian explained, his voice turning clinical. It's the render engine. When the AI tries to visualize the data, it lags. It creates a bottleneck. I need you to optimize the render path. Elena stared at the code. It was massive. Millions of lines. How long do I have? She asked. My CTO, Marcus Vane, arrives at 6 a.m. If this isn't fixed by then, he'll scrap the project and initiate a rollback. You have 3 hours. 3 hours. To fix a render engine that a team of MIT graduates had spent a year building. Elena took a deep breath. She thought of Leo. She thought of the hospital bed, the beeping machines, the doctor's pitying look when she said she couldn't pay. I need coffee, she said. Black. And I need everyone to stop staring at me. Damian snapped his fingers at a junior developer. Get her coffee. The rest of you, eyes on your screens. Elena cracked her knuckles. She closed her eyes for a second, visualizing the structure of the data. She didn't see lines of code. She saw flows of water. The bottleneck was a dam. She just needed to divert the river. She began to type. For the first hour, Damian paced behind her. He watched every keystroke. He was terrified she would delete something critical. But as the minutes ticked by, his pacing stopped. He stood mesmerized. She was using shortcuts he didn't know existed. She was bypassing standard protocols, writing raw assembly code directly into the driver layer. It was dangerous, it was reckless, it was brilliant. Where did you learn this? Damian asked quietly, an hour into the session. Elena didn't stop typing. Stanford. Scholarship kid. Damian raised an eyebrow. I know everyone from Stanford. I don't know you. I didn't finish. Elena said, her voice tight. Junior year. My parents died in a car wreck. No life insurance. My little brother, Leo, survived, but he needed care. Full-time care. I had to choose, finish my degree or pay for his rehab. She hit enter violently. I chose Leo. The room fell silent. The junior developers were listening now. Damian looked at the back of her head, seeing her in a completely new light. She wasn't a waitress who got lucky. She was a prodigy who got robbed by life. I'm sorry, Damian said. It was the first time in years he had apologized to anyone. Don't be sorry, Elena muttered, her eyes scanning the scrolling text. Just pay me. Done, Damian said. It's ready, Elena announced suddenly. It was 5:15 a.m. She spun the chair around. I stripped the graphical interface of the render engine. It doesn't need to draw the data to process it. I made it blind. It only visualizes the output, not the calculation. Damian looked at the screen. You made the AI blind? It processes 40% faster. If it doesn't have to, look at what it's doing, Elena said, wiping sweat from her forehead. Run it. Damian reached out. He clicked execute. The galaxy on the screen froze. Then, it exploded into motion. The frame rate counter in the corner skyrocketed. 60 FPS, 120 FPS, 240 FPS. It was stable. It was flying. Incredible, Damian whispered. He looked at Elena, a genuine, dazzling smile breaking across his face. You did it. You actually did it. He grabbed her shoulders, impulsively pulling her into a hug. Elena stiffened, then relaxed for a fleeting second. She smelled of rain and cheap soap. He smelled of power and sandalwood. Well, well, well. The slow, sarcastic clapping echoed from the elevator bay. Damian and Elena pulled apart. Standing there, flanked by 3 men in suits, was Marcus Vane, the CTO of Waitress Systems. He was a tall man with slicked-back blonde hair and eyes like chips of ice. He looked at Elena with the kind of disdain one reserves for a cockroach on a dinner plate. I leave for 6 hours. Vane sneered, walking into the room. And I come back to find you running unauthorized code written by... the help? The atmosphere in the sanctuary shifted instantly. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus Vane walked straight to Damian's workstation, his expensive Italian loafers clicking sharply on the floor. He ignored Elena entirely, looking only at the CEO. Damian. Vane sighed, shaking his head. We have security protocols for a reason. You can't just pick up strays from the street and give them root access to the mainframe. Do you know the liability implications? The stray just fixed the render engine, Marcus, Damian said, his voice hard. Something you and your team haven't managed to do in 6 months. Vane's jaw tightened. He glanced at the screen, seeing the high frame rates. A flicker of something. Fear? Jealousy? Passed behind his eyes, but he masked it quickly with a scoff. It's a visual glitch, Vane dismissed. She probably just uncapped the refresh rate. It's superficial. The core logic is likely corrupted. It's not a glitch, Elena spoke up. She stood, despite her trembling legs. She felt small next to these titans of industry, but she knew her code. I bypassed the GUI rendering during calculation. It's a headless processing method. It works. Vane turned to her slowly. He looked her up and down, his lip curling. Headless processing? That's cute. Did you read that on a forum somewhere? Listen, sweetheart. Why don't you go find a coffee pot to clean and let the adults talk? Marcus, Damian warned, stepping between them. She's not a waitress. She was top of her class at Stanford before she had to drop out. And right now, she's the lead consultant on this project. Consultant? Vane laughed, a harsh, dry sound. You're hiring her? Damian, have you lost your mind? The board will crucify you. She has no degree, no clearance, no background check. The results speak for themselves, Damian said. We're running the full simulation, now. If it holds, she stays. If it fails, I walk away. It was a gamble. A massive one. Vane narrowed his eyes. Fine, let's run it. But I want my team to monitor the logs. I won't have her destroying our proprietary data. Agreed, Damian said. Elena sat back down. Her hands were shaking again. She felt Vane's eyes boring into the back of her skull. Ready? Damian asked her, his hand resting on the back of her chair. Ready, Elena whispered. She initiated the full launch sequence. The screens around the room lit up. Chimera began to wake up. The data streams flowed beautifully. The efficiency was off the charts. The system was performing better than anyone had ever predicted. Stable at 98%. A junior developer called out, awe in his voice. Temperature is holding. Damian grinned. He looked at Vane. Looks like she did your job, Marcus. Vane didn't answer. He was typing furiously on his own tablet, standing in the shadows near the server racks. Wait, Elena said, frowning. That's odd. What? Damian leaned in. There's a spike in the latency. Just a small one. Line 80. It's probably just the network settling, Damian said. Look at the processing speed. No, Elena typed faster. It's growing. Someone is pinging the server. External request. Suddenly, the screens flashed red. Warning. Security breach. Unauthorized data exfiltration in progress. The smooth blue light of the room turned into a pulsing emergency red. Sirens began to wail softly. What did you do? Damian shouted, looking at the screen. I didn't do anything, Elena cried, her fingers flying. Someone is pulling data out. They're stealing the source code. It's a back door, Vane shouted, stepping forward triumphantly. I knew it. She installed a backdoor script. She's uploading the Chimera algorithm to an external server. No. Elena screamed. I'm trying to stop it. Look at the IP address. Cut the connection, Damian ordered. I can't. It's locked me out. Elena slammed the keyboard. Vane shoved Elena out of the chair, nearly knocking her to the floor. He took over the keyboard. I'm initiating a hard kill. I have to wipe the current session to save the core. He typed a command. The screens went black. The sirens stopped. The room fell into a terrified silence. Vane stood up, adjusting his tie. He turned to Damian, his face grave. We saved the core, Vane said breathlessly. But she tried to steal it all, Damian. I checked the logs while she was running it. There was a hidden shell script inside her. Optimization. Code. It was designed to copy the database and send it to a server in the Cayman Islands. He turned the monitor so Damian could see. There, on the screen, was a line of code. Send _ packet. Destination equals 192.168.xx. Payload equals ALL. I didn't write that, Elena pleaded, stepping toward Damian. You have to believe me. He typed that. He was on his tablet. Damian looked at the code. Then he looked at Elena. His face was pale, his expression unreadable. Elena, Damian said, his voice hollow. That script. It's embedded in the function you wrote. The one you typed when I was getting coffee. No. Elena shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Damian, look at the timestamp. It was added 2 minutes ago. Timestamps can be spoofed, Vane interjected smoothly. She's a corporate spy, Damian. I told you. Apex Corp sent her. The spilled wine, the fixing the bug. It was all a setup to get access to this terminal. Damian stared at her. The trust that had been building for the last 3 hours shattered. He saw the logic. It made sense. A waitress? Who knows quantum coding? It was too good to be true. It was a honeypot. Damian, please, Elena begged, reaching for his arm. He pulled away as if she burned him. Security, Damian said, his voice cold as ice. Miller and 2 other guards rushed in. Get her out of here, Damian said, turning his back to her, and call the police. I want her arrested for industrial espionage. Damian! No! It's a lie! Vane is lying! Elena screamed as the guards grabbed her arms. Vane watched with a smirk as she was dragged toward the elevator. You're lucky, Damian, he said, placing a hand on the CEO's shoulder. If I hadn't been here, she would have stolen the company. Damian stared out the window at the rain-slicked city. He felt sick. He felt foolish. Lock down the building, Marcus, Damian said quietly. Check every line of code. Make sure she didn't leave anything else behind. With pleasure, Vane said. As the elevator doors closed on Elena's sobbing face, Damian felt a pang of doubt. Just a sliver. Why had she pointed out the latency spike? If she was stealing the data, why would she warn him? But the evidence was on the screen. Down in the lobby, the guards dragged Elena through the revolving doors and threw her onto the wet pavement. Don't come back, Miller spat. Police are on their way. Elena scrambled up, clutching her purse. She ran. She ran back into the darkness, back into the rain. She had lost the money. She had lost the job. And now, she was a fugitive. But as she ran, her mind wasn't on the police. It was on the screen she had glimpsed for a split second before Vane shoved her. The IP address the data was being sent to. She had seen it before. It wasn't a server in the Caymans. It was the private home server of Marcus Vane. The neon sign of Cyber City Cafe flickered with a dying buzz, casting a sickly green light onto the wet pavement. It was 4 a.m. Elena pushed open the door, the bell jingling cheerfully, a stark contrast to the dread sitting heavy in her stomach. The place was empty, save for a sleeping attendant and the hum of 30 computer towers. Elena paid $5 for an hour of access, her hands shaking so badly she dropped the coins twice. She sat in the back corner, pulling her hood up. She was a fugitive. The police were likely looking for her. But she couldn't run. Not yet. She logged into a guest terminal. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She didn't go to her email. She didn't check her bank account. She opened the command terminal. Think, Elena. Think. Marcus Vane was smart, but he was arrogant. He had framed her using a script that executed a data transfer. He claimed the destination IP was in the Cayman Islands. But Elena had seen the raw packet header for a split second. She closed her eyes, visualizing the numbers. 192.168.1.55. No, that was a local mask. The external router hop. 204.14.77.12. She typed the address into a traceroute program. It bounced 3 times. Seattle, Portland, then back to Seattle. It wasn't an offshore server. It was a residential static IP in Mercer Island, the wealthiest neighborhood in the city. She cross-referenced the IP with public domain registry records. It was blocked behind a shell company called Obsidian Holdings. Elena's eyes narrowed. She quickly navigated to the King County property tax records. She searched for Marcus Vane. His address, 4402 Shoreline Drive, Mercer Island. She opened a new tab and pinged the IP address, 204.14.77.12. It responded. She had him. The stolen data hadn't gone to the Caymans. It had gone to Vane's basement. But knowing it and proving it were 2 different things. If she went to the police, they would arrest her before she could explain what a packet header was. She needed someone on the inside, someone with the power to freeze the servers. She needed Damian. But Damian thought she was a traitor. Elena stared at the blinking cursor. She had 1 card left to play. She knew the code she had written for the Chimera engine better than anyone. She had left a fingerprint, a specific algorithmic signature in the render engine that optimized the flow. If she could send a message through the code, she began to type. She wasn't hacking into Waitress. Their firewall was too strong now. Instead, she hacked into the public-facing status page of the Waitress website. It was a low-security page used to display stock prices and press releases. She injected a script into the scrolling banner text. It wasn't a virus. It was a message, written in binary, disguised as a glitch in the font rendering. To anyone else, it looked like a flickering pixel. To Damian Blackwood, who obsessed over every detail of his company, it would look like a signal. High above the city, in the penthouse office of Waitress, Damian Blackwood was staring at the wall. He hadn't slept. The sun was beginning to gray the horizon. Marcus Vane had left an hour ago, looking smug, claiming he needed rest before the board meeting at 9 a.m. Damian felt a deep, gnawing wrongness in his gut. He replayed the night in his head. The way Elena typed. The passion in her voice. The sheer brilliance of her solution. Corporate spies don't fix render engines, he thought. They steal them and leave. If she wanted to destroy the company, she could have just let the code crash. By fixing it, she had saved him. Why save the victim you intend to rob? He turned to his computer. He pulled up the Waitress homepage to check the pre-market stock activity. He frowned. The banner at the top, Innovation for the Future, was flickering. Damian leaned in. The flicker had a rhythm. Long, short, long, short. Morse code? No binary. He grabbed a notepad and scribbled down the sequence of the glitches. 01, 01, 01, 1, 011, 01, 011, 011, 1, 011, 011, 01, 011, 01. He translated it rapidly. V-A-N-E. Damian's heart stopped. The next sequence flashed. 4,402 Shoreline. Damian stood up, his chair crashing backward. He knew that address. He had been to Marcus's house for Christmas parties. He looked at the security logs Vane had, quote, analyzed. Vane had said the data went to the Caymans. Damian opened the raw server logs himself. He bypassed Vane's filtered report and went to the root directory. The logs had been edited. There were gaps in the timestamps. File access. 5:14 a.m. user. Root. Vane. File deleted. Damian felt a cold fury wash over him, colder than the rain outside. He had been played. He had let an innocent woman be dragged out by guards while the real snake stood next to him, smiling. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He picked it up. Speak. Did you see the banner? Elena's voice was small, tinny, and terrified. I saw it, Damian said, his voice dropping to a rumble. Where are you? I'm at a cafe on 4th and Pike. I have the traceroute logs, Damian. I can prove the IP belongs to him. He's going to sell Chimera to Apex Corp. He's been shorting your stock for weeks. Stay there, Damian commanded. Do not move. I'm coming for you. Damian, the police. I don't care about the police, Damian said, grabbing his coat. I care about the truth. And I care about my mistake. He hung up. He didn't call his driver. He took the keys to the Aston Martin he kept in the private garage. The one he never drove, because it was too fast, too dangerous. Today, dangerous was exactly what he needed. 8:42 a.m. The interstate. The engine of the Aston Martin DB11 roared like a trapped beast, tearing down the I-5 express lanes at 110 miles per hour. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the Seattle skyline scrubbed clean and glistening under a pale gray morning light. Inside the cockpit of the car, the silence between Damian and Elena was heavy. Elena clutched her laptop to her chest, her knuckles white. She was wearing an oversized hoodie Damian had pulled from the trunk. Branding for Waitress Systems meant for a marketing event that never happened. It swallowed her small frame, making her look even younger than she was. You're shaking, Damian said. He didn't take his eyes off the road, shifting gears with a fluid, aggressive grace. I'm terrified, Elena admitted, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. Damian, these are the most powerful people in the tech industry. Yesterday I was refilling their water glasses. Today I'm supposed to tell them their star executive is a thief? Damian glanced at her. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, were burning with a terrifying resolve. You aren't a waitress today, Elena. You are the only person in that building who understands the truth. Marcus thinks he's won because he controls the narrative. But code doesn't lie. Numbers don't lie. He downshifted as they took the exit ramp, the tires squealing slightly. They will try to break you, Damian warned, his voice hardening. Marcus will try to humiliate you. He'll bring up your education, your background, your brother. He will try to make you feel small, so that the board doesn't look at the screen. What do I do? Elena asked, looking at the looming glass spire of the Aetherist Tower. You don't look at him, Damian said. You look at the data. You speak the language you spoke to me last night. You play jazz. 9:05 a.m., the boardroom. The conference room on the 50th floor was a hermetically sealed chamber of wealth and judgment. The air was recycled, cool, and scented with fresh lilies. Around the 30-foot table, 12 board members sat in silence. These were men and women who moved markets with a whisper. Standing at the head of the table, Marcus Vane looked the picture of corporate stability. He wore a navy suit, his hair perfectly coiffed, his expression somber yet commanding. It pains me to do this, Vane said, his voice smooth as silk. He clicked a remote, and a timeline appeared on the massive wall screen. Damian Blackwood is a visionary. We all know that. But visionaries, they burn out. The pressure of the Chimera launch was too much for him. He paused for effect, looking at the chairman, Arthur Sterling. Bringing a civilian, a service worker, into the server sanctuary was a psychotic break, Vane continued, lowering his voice. He gave her root access. He compromised our entire IP. If I hadn't been there to manually sever the connection, this company would be trading at zero this morning. Sterling frowned, tapping his pen on the obsidian table. And the girl? The spy? Handled, Vane said dismissively. We have the police looking for her. She was likely working for a competitor, though Damian was too deluded to see it. He thought she was fixing the code. In reality, she was installing a siphon. So what is your recommendation, Marcus? Sterling asked. Vane straightened his tie. I recommend an immediate vote of no confidence in Damian Blackwood. I will step in as interim CEO to stabilize the Chimera launch and reassure our shareholders. I second the motion, a board member to the left said. Very well, Sterling sighed. All in favor of removing Damian Blackwood as CEO, please raise your boom. The heavy double doors didn't just open, they were thrown wide with enough force to shatter the glass walls. Every head in the room snapped toward the entrance. Damian Blackwood stood there. He looked nothing like the polished executive they were used to. He was unshaven. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. He looked dangerous. And beside him stood a girl in jeans and a hoodie, clutching a laptop like a weapon. Damian, Vane said, his smile faltering for a microsecond before returning. We were just discussing your health. You really shouldn't be here. I'm sure you were, Marcus, Damian said, his voice low and reverberating through the silent room. He walked into the room, not toward his chair, but toward the projector system. Elena walked in step with him, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Security! Vane barked, losing his cool demeanor. Get them out of here! This man is suspended, pending an investigation! 2 guards stepped forward from the back of the room. Touch me, Damian said, turning to face them, and you'll be looking for work in a saturated market by noon. The guards hesitated. Damian Blackwood was still the name on their paychecks. Sit down, Marcus, Damian ordered. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. The authority in his voice was absolute. This is absurd, Vane scoffed, looking at the board. He brings the girl back? The saboteur? This proves his instability. She has a name, Damian said, plugging Elena's laptop into the HDMI cable. Her name is Elena Ross, and she's going to show you exactly what happened last night. Damian looked at Elena. Go. Elena stepped up to the podium. Her hands were trembling. She looked at the faces of the board members, skeptical, angry, dismissive. Then she looked at Vane, whose eyes were drilling holes into her, promising retribution. Don't look at him. Look at the data. She hit a key. The screen behind her flickered to life. It wasn't a PowerPoint presentation. It was a raw terminal window. My name is Elena, she began, her voice cracking before she cleared her throat and found her strength. I am the one who wrote the patch for the Chimera render engine. Mr. Vane claims I tried to crash it. He claims I tried to steal it. She's lying, Vane interrupted. She's a waitress. Let her speak, Sterling snapped. Elena typed a command. A graph appeared. This is the server performance at 4 a.m. This red line is the crash point. This green spike? That's my code. It bypassed the graphical interface during calculation. It increased efficiency by 340%. She pointed to the screen. You can see the timestamps. The system wasn't crashing. It was flying. Until... She hit another key. Until an external script was executed. A command to copy the entire database and send it out. The siphon she installed, Vane shouted, pointing a finger at her. There's your proof. No, Elena said firmly, because I traced the packet. She brought up the traceroute map. It was complex, a web of nodes and servers. But the red line was clear. It didn't go to an offshore account. It didn't go to a competitor. Mr. Vane spoofed the logs to say this data went to the Cayman Islands. Elena explained, her fingers flying across the keys now, her confidence surging with every line of code she revealed. But data packets leave footprints, digital crumbs. I traced the hops. She zoomed in on the map. The red line ended in a residential neighborhood. This IP address, Elena said, is 4402 Shoreline Drive, Mercer Island. The room went deadly silent. Damian stepped forward. Arthur, he said to the chairman, who lives at 4402 Shoreline Drive. Arthur Sterling looked at Marcus Vane. The color had drained from Vane's face, leaving him a pale, sweaty mask of terror. Marcus does, Sterling whispered. I was backing up the data, Vane stammered, standing up, knocking his chair over. I was securing it. I didn't trust her. Is that why you were also shorting the stock? Elena asked. She delivered the final blow. She opened the hidden partition she had found in the logs. It showed the wire transfer request from Apex Corp, $20 million, pending the delivery of the Chimera source code. You weren't backing it up, Marcus, Damian said, his voice cold as the grave. You were selling us out. You were going to crash the demo, tank the stock, let the board fire me, and then sell the tech to Apex for a fortune. Vane looked around the room. There were no allies left. The board members looked at him with pure disgust. It was my code, Vane screamed, his composure shattering completely. I built the architecture. You, he pointed at Damian, you just sit in your office and drink scotch while I do the work. And then you bring in this trash to fix my work? He lunged toward Elena. Damian moved faster than anyone expected. He stepped in front of Elena, shoving Vane back hard. Vane stumbled and fell against the obsidian table. It's over, Marcus, Damian said. Arthur Sterling was already on his phone. Security. Police. Send them to the boardroom. Now. 2 minutes later, Marcus Vane was dragged out of the room in handcuffs, screaming obscenities, his legacy destroyed in a matter of seconds. The silence that followed was deafening. Damian turned to the board. He looked exhausted, but for the first time in months he looked free. The Chimera update is live, Damian said simply. Ms. Ross fixed the latency. The stock is already rebounding. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have work to do. He didn't wait for permission. He placed a hand on Elena's back and guided her out of the room. Blank, the aftermath. They didn't speak until they were back in the elevator, descending toward the lobby. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving Elena's knees feeling like jelly. She slumped against the mirrored wall. You okay? Damian asked softly. I think I'm going to throw up, Elena laughed nervously. Damian smiled. A real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. You were incredible. Data leaves footprints. I liked that. It's true, Elena breathed. I can't believe it worked. It worked because it was the truth, Damian said. He turned to face her. You saved the company, Elena. You saved me. The elevator dinged. So, Elena asked, clutching her purse. Am I rehired? Or should I go ask the cafe for my apron back? I think we can do better than that, Damian said. 3 days later. The private waiting room of Bellevue Neurology Center was quiet. The coffee was terrible, but Elena didn't care. She sat in the uncomfortable chair, her leg bouncing nervously. The double doors swung open. Dr. Aris, the chief neurosurgeon, walked out, pulling off his surgical cap. Elena stood up so fast she nearly tripped. "Doctor, how is he? Is Leo?" The surgery was a complete success. Dr. Aris smiled. "We removed the entire obstruction. The pressure on his optic nerve is gone. He's waking up now. He's asking for his sister." Elena let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Tears streamed down her face, hot and fast. She covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking. "Go see him," the doctor said. Elena ran past him. But before she entered the recovery room, she stopped. Damian was standing at the end of the hallway. He had been there the whole time, waiting, watching from a distance. He wasn't wearing a suit today. He wore a simple black sweater and jeans. He nodded at her. A silent acknowledgement. Go. Elena looked at him, her heart swelling with a gratitude that words couldn't hold. She mouthed a simple, "Thank you." She turned and ran into the room where her brother was waiting, alive and whole. 1 week later, the Atheros offices were buzzing. The Chimera launch had shattered industry records. But in the corner office, the one with the best view of the Space Needle, things were calm. Elena sat at her new desk, a custom-built rig with 4 monitors and a mechanical keyboard that cost more than her first car. The nameplate on the door read, Elena Ross, Chief Systems Architect. Damian walked in carrying 2 coffees. He set one down on her desk. "Black, 2 sugars," he said. "You remembered." Elena smiled, not looking away from her code. "I remember everything," Damian said, leaning against the doorframe. "How's the new update coming?" "The render engine is perfect," Elena said, spinning her chair around. "But I found a redundancy in the security protocol. I'm rewriting it." "Good," Damian said. "We need the best. We have a lot of enemies." "Let them come," Elena said, her fingers hovering over the keys. "I'm not going anywhere." Damian watched her work for a moment, marveling at the turn of fate. He had gone looking for a waitress to clean up a mess, and he had found the partner who would help him build an empire. "No," Damian said, taking a sip of his coffee. "I don't believe you are." And that is the story of how a spilled glass of wine and a brilliant mind turned a billionaire's worst nightmare into his greatest victory. It just goes to show that talent doesn't always wear a suit and tie. Sometimes it wears a waitress uniform. And sometimes the people we overlook are the ones holding the keys to the kingdom. Elena didn't just save a company. She saved her brother, and she saved Damian from his own arrogance. It's a reminder that everyone has a story, and everyone deserves a second look. I want to hear from you guys in the comments. If you were in Elena's shoes, standing in that boardroom, would you have been able to stand up to Marcus Vane? Or would you have taken the money and run? Let me know. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of betrayal, coding, and redemption, please smash that like button. It really helps the algorithm. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss a story. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.